Okay. Howdy, y'all. Corstian, one of your co-hosts is on your left. I'm Josh. We're finally here. 2 days away from the NFL season. That felt really, really fast. I'm super
hmm
excited. Welcome back, guys. We hope you had a wonderful Labor Day. I'm very excited. College football's already underway. So many great quarterbacks that I watched over the past weekend, like the USC LSU game. That was great. Even before
hmm
that, I think it was like Notre Dame and like Texas A&M. That was a great game.
hmm
Not great quarterback play per se, but like USC and LSU, this was after Shador Sanders put on a show. I think there's a lot to be excited about with the upcoming quarterback class.
hmm
Not just this year, but like next year. There's a lot of great talent. Arch Manning showed up, but yeah, Corsair and I are fresh out of our fantasy drafts from last night. Corsair, how you feeling?
Yeah, I feel pretty good with my draft here. There was like one or two guys, kind of late round guys that I was like eyeing and that got taken kind of like right under my feet, and I was like, I would have liked them, but they were late round guys, so it is what it is. But overall, I feel pretty confident in my team. Um, I feel like every year ESPN projects me to be like ranked 9 or 10, but then I do a lot better than that. So I got ranked that same way again this year, and hopefully I beat those odds again and have a nice run this season.
ESPN doesn't know what it's talking about. Like in one of
hmm
my college leagues, I got ranked for the worst draft ever. I
hmm
ended up finishing the league with like the best record.
hmm
Um, and I kind of got unlucky because I bit the HN bug in my first playoff game,
hmm
lost. Um, so I've repeatedly finished third in that league, and it kind of annoys me. So hopefully
hmm
this year will change that. But
Yeah.
yeah, who are sleepers? I'm curious to see. We can kind of like dive in on which of the teams were here. So I was Youngblood Scorpion. It's just a name I really like to put. There's no significant meaning
hmm
behind it. I think my Xbox gamer tag was like E Scorpion or something. And then
uh-huh.
at the time I made the name, I was like, oh, Youngblood's a cool name. I think I got inspired by the song Youngblood. Um,
hmm
and then I just put the names together. I'm like, yeah, I bet nobody has this as their team name. So then,
uh-huh.
yeah, I just rode the wave with that. So that's my team name. Corsian, who are you? What's your team name?
So I got a pretty cool team name. I see a lot of the members in our league don't actually change their name. Like there's 3, 4 people with like just their name, but I am Ask ETN season. I drafted Travis ETN with my second round pick, and I thought that was kind of a
Yeah,
funny name, so it's kind of what I went with.
yeah, clever there. Again, guys, I tried to tell him this is a PG podcast, PG fantasy league here. Won't listen, but honestly, that's a great team name.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know how to segue off of that, but
um,
yeah, I mean, no brainer, number one pick, CMC.
mhm,
Um, yeah, I mean, if I had any other pick, like any other place, like if I was picking five or below, I probably would have picked Saquon,
mhm,
regardless of where he was. Unless, I mean, I'm debating right now whether to pick Tyreek number four or like Saquon number four because I know one of those guys will be there. And I
mhm,
was really surprised to see Saquon slip to the second round because you guys
uh-huh.
heard me talk about it on this podcast. He was ranked the second running back on our episodes where we had like our
Mhm,
top three being all the same. I
mhm,
think he's due for a big season, and this is the format where you want to draft him, like
mhm.
in the first round, make it a priority. So I actually
Yeah.
think my friend Kyle here, he got Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley as his
Mhm.
teammates Slim Burrow. Like he got a great pair of running backs and great offenses. So that was
Yeah, I
very
thought that
exciting
was a
for him.
great turnaround for him. Like because I feel like Taylor in the mock drafts that I've done, he's gotten maybe around like the 6, 7 range, and Saquon maybe goes around that 10, 11 range. And so it's really hard to get both of them, and so it was really nice value he got there, just getting Taylor and Barkley.
Yeah, and then you picked up Justin Jefferson. I was kind of surprised because if you look at the guys like Chase, Amon Ra, and then AJ Brown, they're all in better offenses than him. So I wanted to see what your justification. I know we ranked him as the number one receiver,
hmm
like in our podcast, but
Yeah.
I was curious to see why you picked him sixth here, given the
Um,
situation.
yeah, for me, I was debating between Jefferson and St. Brown. Um, and with Jefferson, I mean, like, sure, his like offense is less superior comparison to the next three guys that were taken right after, but I mean, within their offense, it's kind of built to just force feed Justin Jefferson the ball regardless. And so I think you really can't go wrong with any of these four guys right there. But um, I just like Jefferson being kind of the sole guy, especially with TJ Hawkinson being out the first couple weeks of the season. And then probably, it'll be slow to get him fully started this year. And so I liked him.
Yeah, we don't have to go for a full breakdown of like each and every selection here. Um, so I can kind of go through my second and third round strategy since you talked about ETN.
Hmm.
For me, in the first three rounds, I really wanted to hammer home running backs because I noticed just look at the first round itself, like seven receivers went, oh no, sorry, six receivers went, and in the second round, you're seeing another hedge on receivers here. I was really hoping to get two of the three running backs, if not all three, because I was really prioritizing hitting running back
Hmm.
heavy in this draft, given just the amount of great receivers you can get later on. So I was hoping Derrick Henry would slide to me in this at the end of the second round, because that
Hmm.
has happened in almost every mock draft I've been in. Um,
Yeah.
he got scooped up by somebody three picks before me, so
Hmm.
I couldn't do that option. And then the other guy was Josh Jacobs. I
Hmm.
really like the situations like the running back, like CMC. Obviously, I knew I was going to get him, but like Derrick
Hmm.
Henry and Josh Jacobs, they're both on offenses that are gonna heavily utilize them a
Hmm.
lot for what they ask. Um, and if you can get those kind of guys like Jonathan Taylor, Saquon, Bijan, if you can get like one of those guys, and maybe two or three of those guys, you're in a great spot as far as like
Hmm.
a fantasy drafter. So, yeah, kind of a bummer there. So I pivoted to Mike Evans. I was debating Nico Collins for Mike Evans.
Hmm.
I stuck with Mike Evans here because he's kind of over reliable. You know what you're going to get, but he's also
Hmm.
going to give you those peaks of values where like if I'm looking at this team and I'm like, oh, I have Christian McCaffrey, he can kind of help offset a bad Mike Evans week. But if Mike Evans goes off and Christian McCaffrey goes off, I'm probably beating most teams in a week. So
Hmm.
like I kind of looked at that and said, okay, Mike Evans had a great season last year. Chris Godwin's only going to be better next season, which is going to help him out.
Hmm.
Plus one more year with Baker Mayfield. He's best suited towards Baker Mayfield's like just throw it up because he just has this catch radius that's insane. So
Hmm.
I was like, gotta pick him. And then Josh Jacobs, I think nobody's talking enough about him because he came from like a dysfunctional Las Vegas situation
Hmm.
that only found himself once Pierce was the head coach, but by then he came into a better spot. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my thinking there.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought those are both pretty good picks for you. And then I was pretty happy with my rounds 3 and 4. I felt like they both were kind of draft. I was able to get them around later than I think the average draft position for these guys with Devonte Adams. I saw him go like late second in a lot of drafts, and then same with Kenneth Walker. I feel like I've seen him go like mid third, and so I'm just getting rounding out my starting receivers and starting running backs like that. I was pretty happy with, and then
Yeah,
I just built
yeah,
up.
great
Yeah.
selection there. I
Hmm.
was going to round four, and you were talking about guys that fell. I was really surprised to land Cooper Cup. I mean,
Hmm.
I would have preferred to have got. I was hoping that Ayuk slid to me, so I get like Ayuk and Cup. Um,
Hmm.
got sniped there by one pick, which sucks. But I'm really shocked Cooper Cup's being taken this low.
Hmm.
You know, he should not be going at the end of the fourth round.
Yeah.
And quick thing on fifth round pick, Jalen Hurts. I think this is one of those drafts where you want to get a rushing quarterback early
Hmm.
because there's a lot of good quarterbacks, but what's the differentiating factor? I think the rushing is in like these formats. So like 5 for 7, I was thinking about get a Jalen Hurts, Anthony Richardson,
Hmm.
um, like Lamar Jackson, one of those three. Try and get one of those because that's again going to be a league separator at the end
Hmm.
of the year. So
Yeah. Yeah, and then 5 and 6, I just kind of went receiver depth here for myself. Because guys that I think have pretty high ceilings going into the season, just from what I've heard from like off-season buzz. But yeah, I went two receivers there. Round 7, I went quarterback. And what led me to go quarterback here, I think, was I was initially thinking maybe I go tight end round 7, and then I saw this huge run on tight ends happen, and so I'm kind of in like the mentality where you fight like when everyone zigs zag, and so everybody's going tight end, and so I went quarterback here just because I'm not going to like scramble and reach for a tight end when all these tight ends are going off the board, because I think inevitably I think the next ranked tight end like 3 rounds later, and so I'm glad I didn't panic draft the tight end here and went quarterback.
Yeah, and some guys did that and I kind of forced this myself when I saw Mark Andrews being taken. I was like, I probably can't wait around on this. So I kind of blame myself because like at the time I was picking, it was just Kincaid, Pitts, Kittle, and that was it. Those are like the 3 guys you wanted in that situation because like all those guys would go off by like round 6 or 7, like middle of round 6 or 7. I was like, okay, I don't have a tight end yet. I want one of these guys. And Kincaid and Pitts were like Pitts was number 2 on my board, and Kincaid was number 3 on my board. And I was like, I could use more receivers now because I only have Cooper Kupp. But if I wait until like round 11 or 12, the best I could hope for is Brock Bowers. And that's a huge risk I didn't want to take with my lineup. I essentially look at this as getting another receiver given how talented both players are. And I think when I pick these two, everybody's like, shoot, he took 2 tight ends. Now I gotta get a tight end just to fit in my starting lineup. So I think the intent here is not that I'm trying to build insurance for myself. That helps. But I think later down the line, if I do want to upgrade at receiver, I have some tradable pieces. Like let's say Kyle Pitts is going off, but I don't think it's sustainable. Then I can trade him in for like a wide receiver 2/1. So it just gives me more like roster flexibility, but also like it can help me ride the injury wave as well. There's no denying that.
Yeah. I think just landing those 2 and being set for tight end pretty much all year, it's pretty nice. Only if this was like a tight end premium league, I think that would have been like super super cool. But
if there was a tight end premium league, these guys are not going around 6 or 7.
Well, yeah, I know,
No
but
way.
like,
yeah,
I think even if you made it a tight end premium league, I don't know how the rest of the league would have valued tight ends anyways. And you probably could have gotten these guys maybe not as early, or they wouldn't probably get as early, drafted as early as most tight end premium leagues, but you probably wouldn't be getting them at this point in the draft either. But I think my greatest values in the draft, though, I got in my rounds 8 and 9, where I got Javonte Williams and Devin Singletary, where these are 2 guys that will likely be like the bell cow backs for their teams. Getting these guys that have, I think, pretty high upside. Javonte Williams finally had like a year sort of recovered from his injury. Devin Singletary, he balled out last season. There's really no competition for him with the Giants at the running back position. And I'm drafting these guys amidst Jalen Warren and like Tony Pollard and Brian Robinson, who I think have pretty stark running back like by committee kind of rooms that they're built around. But so I was pretty happy with being able to land Javonte Williams and Singletary solo.
I think you missed out on one guy that's a favorite of mine, though. Raheem Mostert. I think I like Raheem Mostert's situation better than like all the guys you mentioned there. And he's technically the best option the Dolphins have in between the tackles. So he might have been a round 10 guy if he lasted there for me. But I agree with the logic. That's why I picked Najee. I think everyone's down on Najee because the way he's been used last season and thinking that Jalen Warren's a better back. And there's things Jalen Warren does better than Najee. But at the same time, I don't think Najee was put in the best situation to be effective. And when I look at Arthur Smith's offense, he utilizes guys like Tyler Algier, Derrick Henry, like guys that can pound in between the tackles very, very well. And I think he'll make good use of Najee, pound the ball more than people like. And then I went LA heavy. Lamb McConkey was like he's a guy that I think can give starter production. I think he's the best receiving option on the
Mm-hmm.
Chargers right now, which is saying a lot. And I think it's going to be in scripts where he's going to get heavily utilized. Like I think he's going to be in the Keenan Allen role. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
really high on him this season. So I kind of reached for him at this point in the draft, but he was like a guy was like
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have much receiving options. Like my receiving depth is not ideal. So this is
Mm-hmm.
a guy I definitely wanted to have. And then rounds 10, 11. A lot of people didn't know who's going to be the starting running back for the Chargers. And I was kind of in this unique spot where it's like it doesn't matter who's the starter on the Chargers because I have them both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's kind of like I'm a fan of J.K. Dobbins' upside. To me, he's like neck and neck in the talent as Jonathan Taylor before all the injuries happened. So I'm still willing to take a bet in like round
Mm-hmm.
10 on him while having the insurance policy that if he, for whatever reason he gets injured, I know what I'm getting in Gus Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can give me running back 2 value to help supplant like Christian McCaffrey or Josh Jacobs if Christian McCaffrey gets hurt. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of I built in like lineup strategies with these moves while also making sure that I have the starter on
Mm-hmm.
the Chargers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just investing in that Chargers room I think is pretty nice. I think they'll have a
Especially
really
because they
nice.
both played in Roman scheme. They both played in
Mhm.
Roman scheme, and they both playing with a quarterback that's coming in with more like passing talents than Lamar.
Mhm.
Not that Lamar doesn't have it, but like Justin Herbert is like an
Mhm.
absolute cannon of an
Mhm.
arm.
Yeah.
And I think having that will give both of these guys scoring opportunities.
Mhm. Yeah. So I managed to get Justin Herbert in round 13, which I was pretty happy with.
Yeah.
I think 2 years ago, you see a guy like Herbert get drafted maybe like around maybe like seven-ish, 6 or 7. And obviously he had a down year last year, but I think, like you said, a whole new offense kind of coming together. I think he'll have a nice boom in production this upcoming season. And so if, let's say CJ Stroud has some type of sophomore slump, I'm pretty confident in putting Justin Herbert to hopefully ball out for me.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason why I didn't pick him there is so for me, the surrounding situation in fantasy wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
I can't see a path where he could be a record-breaking season. So I keep
Mm-hmm.
my standards high with the quarterbacks, as you can tell,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I picked Jalen Hurts because he has all these weapons now,
Mm-hmm.
even though they just added 2 new ones. For
Yeah.
me, I was debating whether to go Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams here, and I ended up
Mm-hmm.
going Caleb Williams here. I wanted to go with a guy from Buffalo, nice receiver, but he got picked a couple spots ahead of me, which
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really a fan of. So I was like, getting Corstian, like this is a guy I love, and you just had to take him
Mm-hmm.
there. So I
Yeah.
was annoyed. So in round 13, you can see my panic move. I panicked and then went to reliable Tyler Lockett. I have no idea why he's in round 13. He shouldn't be in round 13, but he is.
Mm-hmm.
So I just took it and I was like, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunities where he and JSN can move around in the formation. So I really like him as an option there. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I went Caleb Williams and Tyler Lockett here. The Williams pick, it was like it's just banking on the second half of the season. For a guy like Hurts, if he starts to tail off, I think
Mm-hmm.
I have a guy that's hitting it at the right time. I'm trying to find the windows here. So
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't happen, this is a huge risk
Mm-hmm.
because I could have got Trevor Lawrence in round
Yeah.
12 if I wanted to. A guy who I think is a top 10 quarterback on my board. But I went full upside here with Caleb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In general, for me, for my rounds 11, 12, 13, 14, which are my last 4 player picks, I went maybe lower floors but really high upside type players where, TJ Hawkinson, he starting out the year hurt, but I think towards the end of the season, if he's, back to where he was last year, he could be a potential league winner with just having crazy tight end games. Same with Khalil Shakir. There's question marks around this Bills room. We don't know exactly how it's all going to pan out, but Shakir could be that guy. Same with Justin Herbert. Down year last year, he could be good this year. And then
Josh Allen
Jameson.
has produced with less. So it
Mm-hmm.
would not surprise me if Khalil was like has a really good year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Jameson Williams. There's a couple guys I think keeping him off the field a little bit last season, like Josh Reynolds, who I think, I mean, he didn't have the yardage, but he still, he had key catches throughout the season, and so now there's less competition for Jameson Williams. We saw what some of his highs were like, and so if he is officially the number 2 guy, I mean, obviously Laporta and St. Brown are the 1 and 2, but the number 2 receiver, I think he could have a potentially big season as well. But if he doesn't have a big season, I have a lot of receiver depth ahead of him anyways, so it's not the end of the world for me there.
Yeah. And for the 14th pick for me, since we're on it, this was also my last player pick. I picked Adonai Mitchell. And here I was debating whether I should go Mingo or Mitchell. Mingo was a little bit more of a risky pick for me, whereas like Mitchell, I
Mm-hmm.
think he's in a better environment than Mingo is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if I look at this right, Josh Downs is coming off of injury.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really high on Anthony Richardson as a prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Even if Downs is on the field and so is Pittman, and you got Jelani Woods, you got Jonathan Taylor going. Adonai Mitchell brings something that all those guys don't have, an athletic traits and just freakish athletic ability, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Anthony Richardson is not afraid to trust his guys. Like, even with Alec Pierce still in the fold, I think there will be opportunities for Mitchell to step up. And if injuries hit, like this is a key guy, key cog, another guy that I think can hit that second half of the year window, just start to ball out.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of like substitute a receiver if they start balling out in the first 3 weeks kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Could be him or Lockett, but Lockett has a little bit more pedigree. I think Mitchell is kind of like that guy I want to keep on the roster for half the season if I can, but like I'm not afraid to pivot if another immediate option presents itself that's going to help out my team. So,
Yeah.
At this point, I was definitely not happy that I saved like 2 of my 5 receivers I picked for rounds 13 and 14. I would have preferred if they were picked in like 8, 9, and 10, but I'm happy with the way the lineup constructed itself. So
yeah,
it's pretty fun. Yeah, so that was our fantasy lineups. I know we weren't going to analyze every pick, but we ended up doing that. But
yeah,
I think
that's
it's
what
fun.
we do. We're fantasy guys.
Yeah, it's fun to go over like how we structure our GM moves. I just traded Chigo Conquo for a 3rd round pick for the future, so I'm already looking at next year's guys and keeping tabs on sleepers and guys. So like I'm always about the draft stuff. I got a draft tonight, so I'm really excited about it. Alrighty, storyline time. I have no particular ranking with mine, but I just put it in a 3-2-1 format. I'm not sure how you did it, Corstian, but what's the number 1 storyline you're looking into before the season starts in 2 days?
Yeah, I don't really have like a ranking per se either, so I'm on there with you. But I think one of them is which receiver kind of is the standout in the Texans receiving room. Obviously, I think there's a chance that all 3 of them, put up 1,000 receiving yards and just blow us all away. But I think just because of how good all 3 of those guys are, I feel like one of them will just have that better connection with CJ Stroud and end up kind of running away with maybe being like a 1,400 yard guy, where the other 2s are maybe like an 800 to 1,000 yard kind of guy. And so, seeing obviously Stephon Diggs, he's older, and so like that downward trajectory is kind of like in a lot of people's mindsets that people don't like his personality quite a lot. But
Corstian, he didn't forget how to play football.
He didn't forget how to play football. Yeah, that's what he said. And so, there's obviously him, Tank Dell. He was balling out. It seems like he has a good connection with CJ Stroud, but it appears that he'll be kind of like bumped out in 2 wide receiver sets for Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs will probably be there for 2 receiver sets. But who knows how the season will actually go. And the Nico Collins, obviously, he's been with the Texans the longest. Even though it's been like literally just like a year or 2 extra. But then I think we've seen how good he is. I think he, like in college, quarterback play wasn't as good for him. And so he obviously wasn't drafted with the same pedigree, I think, as a lot of other superstar receivers. But obviously last season we saw what he can do. And so it'll just be interesting to see who really stands out and steps up within that receiving room.
And don't forget about Xavier Hutchinson.
Mhm.
He made Noah Brown expendable this offseason. And Noah Brown like was a big standout on the Texans, especially
Mhm.
when like Tank Dell got hurt. Keep in mind Tank Dell was coming off a nasty injury on a blocking assignment. So I think he still might ramp up to speed. But
Mhm.
I look at this as like the reason why I was considering Nico Collins and like that second round pick was I see him as the number one on this team.
Mhm.
And I see like Diggs as kind of like your one-on-one like guy in man coverage that you trust, and then like Tank Dell is like the cherry on top guy.
Mhm.
And it's not to disrespect Tank Dell. I think CJ Stroud will get these guys the ball somehow
Mhm.
in different spots. I think honestly, I think he can support three 1,000-yard receivers.
Mhm.
So I don't think it really matters who's a standout. But
Mhm.
if I'm just looking to see who's going to have the most production, I think it'll be Collins. But like 1,000-yard receiving yardage from Diggs is still good. It's still
Mhm.
good.
Mhm.
This might be his best opportunity to win a Super Bowl in the
Mhm.
environment he is, and he's had a
Yeah.
lot of great opportunities in the Bills. But
Mhm.
I see this as like kind of like Collins 1, Diggs like 2A, and Tank Bell 2B. I don't think it's like a 1, 2, 3 kind of pecking order here.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, like, yeah, there's a good chance that all three of them potentially have 1,000 yard season. Like the quarterback is of that pedigree to have, produce those types of numbers for his receivers. But then I mean you got like I still think Dalton Schultz isn't a bum or anything, I mean like he isn't one of the top tier tight ends in the league, but he draws targets. Joe Mixon, I think he'll draw targets, albeit it's a running back, so it's like there's only so many that he'll draw, but there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. But still, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if all three of the receivers have 1,000 yards. But it'd
Yeah,
just be interesting to see kind of who stands out amongst that group.
yeah. No, I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see that offense because you're not going to be able to like key in on one guy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my number three storyline is about a team that we didn't we saw for 4 plays, and then we were like, okay, this is a lost cause because we know what Zach Wilson brings to the table. Um, for me, it's the New York Jets. Are they a Super Bowl contender? They have the defense. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that we knew from last year.
Mm-hmm.
They have the running back, elite talent, elite talent. He made the Dalvin Cook signing expendable, which is why he's on the Cowboys now. And Dalvin Cook's a great player. That's just how good Brees Hall is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But the question was about like the receivers outside of Garrett Wilson. And then they go in and bring Mike Williams. They figure out their emergency quarterback situation. And now you got a healthy Aaron Rodgers coming in who rushed his recovery, but now had a full year to recover.
Mm-hmm.
Can they hang with Miami, Buffalo, Baltimore, dare I say Kansas City, which they somehow did in their regular season game with Zach Wilson? That was like one of Zach Wilson's best games. Can they hang with those teams like Texans, like we just talked about?
Mm-hmm.
I think they have all the pieces to do it. They just got to execute as one unit to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
we don't know that because 4 plays in, everything went haywire. So to me, that's a major storyline I want to keep eyes on this season. How good are the New York Jets?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a valid question. Because obviously last year, when they got Aaron Rodgers, that was the whole talk of the town. Everybody was like, "What is the ceiling for these Jets?" And now, because he got hurt, I feel like everybody's just back down on the Jets. And I feel like Aaron Rodgers feels pretty forgotten. Like no one's really talking about him. And so it's a very under the radar team, and it'll just be interesting what Aaron Rodgers officially is able to bring to this team.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hopefully he can still like plant his foot the same way and deliver like not that he needs it. He
Hmm.
has the weirdest arm delivery, like like footwork, and he can throw from any angle. So like
Hmm.
he could make it work. It's just how does this look like on this team with all their pieces? Does their defense
Hmm.
still have the same tenacity and effort that they did last season?
Hmm.
A lot of moving parts too, but I'm excited to see how they turn out.
Hmm.
Okay, what's the next storyline you got?
My next storyline is can the second-year tight ends continue this upward trajectory that they got? I mean, I'm pretty high on them. I mean, I was willing to draft them in fantasy. They just were taken ahead of where I wanted. But I mean, we got guys like Dalton Kincaid, and like Sam Laporte is the obvious ones. But even like we talked about Luke Musgrave, he was good last season. And it's like, because on average, most tight ends do take a couple years in the league to officially, get their foothold, like that proper foothold in the position, and start, consistently producing numbers. Will there be any kind of like sophomore slump for these guys? And so that's kind of like just a big question that I got. I think, I mean, I ranked these guys really high anyways, so I think they'll do good. But it's always just kind of like a lingering question where how it's like, have they? Because I don't feel like they've peaked, but they've reached kind of like peak numbers that you typically want to see from tight ends. And so it's kind of like, how much more can they grow? It'll be interesting kind of just follow the career paths of this class of tight ends, even like maybe the past like 1 or 2 seasons of tight ends. And then obviously Brock Bowers drafted here, Ben Sinnott, a couple other guys of this class, just kind of seeing how the tight end room changes over the next couple of years with these young guys if they can continue breaking out like they are.
Yeah, I mean, other than like Evan Ingram, like and Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, and like George Kittle, like this is just an entirely new group. Like think about 3 years from now, we were saying like, oh my goodness, if you don't have a Kittle, Andrews, or Kelce, you're done. Like because you don't have that elite guy, like from the outside. But yeah, they're changing the game. They're changing how they're utilized. Like just look at the Brock Bowers selection. Just because the Raiders drafted Michael Mayer, like a guy, Michael Mayer, like a guy who was like highly touted at the time from Notre Dame. Like he still needed some work from the receiving game, but it didn't stop them from drafting Brock Bowers because tight ends are just used differently now. They're used exclusively as receivers, or like they're used like in line with another tight end to help with the passing game. So you have more variety. So you still have your blocking tight end, but you have your receiving tight end. And since they're in line, it's harder to keep track of them. Yeah, even guys like Trey McBride, really excited to see him perform. Like especially with the guys around him. Don't forget about Dallas Goedert. Like he's not a second year guy, but I feel like he's almost forgotten about because of this new crop of tight ends that have come up. So really excited to see them. I'm a fan of these players just because like you didn't really see tight ends as talented coming out like in waves and numbers like this. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how Pitts performs this season as well. I know he's a third year guy, but it should be exciting to watch.
Yeah.
Okay. My second thing is about a team as well. Compared to my third thing, I look at this team and they've had multiple opportunities to win the big one. They had it in 2019, they had it last year, and there haven't been like they haven't been like they haven't gotten the job done. And it's been against the same team. San Francisco, can they finally win it? They have all the pieces. There's a lot of question marks. They re-signed Ayuk. They re-signed Trent Williams today. They have all the pieces they need to make a run. Can they finish the job? Can they finish the job? That's what it comes down to. And they were right there with the Chiefs in both games. 3 points and whatnot. Like if they convert like a simple third down in the fourth quarter, I don't think we're having this conversation. I think they end up winning the Super Bowl. But they gotta go out and do it. They gotta go out and do it because Philadelphia's coming, Detroit's coming, Green Bay's coming in the future. I don't think it's this year. Their own division is headed right for their throats. The Rams and the Cardinals are gaining steam on them fast. They got to get the job done now, especially with all the contracts they got to deal with next year year following that. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
my number 2 storyline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like luckily for now, I still think that the 49ers are probably like the best built team uh in at least the NFC, potentially the league. Um yeah, I mean like granted, I mean like it's still an any given Sunday sport where I'm not surprised when a team like the Eagles, Cowboys or like Lions do beat a team like the 49ers. But like it's if you're a 49ers fan, I guess it is comforting that you got a good team that is still probably, at least for now, currently the favorites to make it to the Super Bowl, at least on the NFC side. But yeah, it's like if they if it's a Chiefs 49ers Super Bowl this time around again, like what will be different that'll give them like the proper edge over their opponents to beat the Chiefs in the big game. And maybe it's like you hope it's not the Chiefs and another team beats them and it's a more beatable team than the Chiefs in that weird way, but I don't know.
And your hope is that Drake Greenlaw stays healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been the difference in that game. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's and like the practice. I remember the practice fields for the Super Bowl leading up. Not ideal, not up to grades. Like they should have been practicing on that. Like it's that's all stuff out of their control. But the stuff within their control is like convert the third downs, convert the easy passes that you know how to do. Don't
Mm-hmm.
get like their interior blocking is better. They addressed that in the draft. They addressed that in free agency. They
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have the Chris Jones problem be as prevalent as it was in the Super Bowl now, where it's
Mm-hmm.
costing them repeated touchdowns. So all those tiny differences they made, while largely keeping the same team, that should account for something. They
Yeah.
gotta get it done because this might be their last chance. Heck, I could have put Detroit up here, given the amount
Mm-hmm.
of teams that have come up so quickly in the NFC North.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit may be on their last opportunity to win a Super Bowl, or
Yeah.
it's Jordan Love and Caleb Williams' time because day for day, like they're better than Jared Goff. I'm sorry to say, Jared Goff's a good QB, great
Mm-hmm.
QB, but he doesn't have the athletic talent or the passing talent that Caleb and Jordan Love have.
Mm-hmm.
They built a great team around him, and he stepped up a lot. He stepped up a lot, but I think you're gonna start to see the difference between him and a guy with the level of talent that you see in Jordan Love and Caleb. So I could have put them here too, but I think for San Francisco, they've been to the big game twice in the past 5 years, and they haven't gotten it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alrighty,
Okay. So my
last one.
last one. This one's more like team centric compared to my first two, just being about like kind of specific, maybe like the receiver room and players and whatnot. But this one is how much better do the Carolina Panthers play this season? I mean, like I expect them to do better than last year. Last year was just a mess for them. So they invested in the O line. They drafted and traded for talent in the receiving room and the tight ends, I guess. So they added a lot of pieces, and so this is, I think, like the classic test that we've seen, kind of like around guys like Justin Fields and like a lot of other younger guys, like I mean like Kenny Pickett slightly, where you add this talent to this team's offense, and you're expecting these huge jumps in play, and then you don't, and so it's like, will Bryce Young, will he be able to properly acclimate now that he has talent on the team? Will just the offense be able to like mesh in general? Because I mean, while they did make a lot of upgrades, it is a lot of different pieces that you bring to this offense. And so it's like, will they work together well? It's like, was the coaching up to the task of making sure these guys are working within the system, all the gears are working. And so that's something that interests me this year, especially just because obviously the dialogue around Bryce Young is that the Panthers made a mistake in drafting him. They should have drafted C.J. Stroud. And then there's the whole argument of, well, if C.J. Stroud was drafted to the Panthers, would he have been like good? And then if Bryce Young, if he was on this Texans team, would he have been better? And so it's kind of, I feel like it's a weird second year prove it season for Bryce Young and for this Panthers team.
I think it's just from the prove it standpoint of like show improvement.
Mhm.
Like we're not expecting the Panthers to make the playoffs. We're not
Mhm.
expecting them to be a bottom 5 pick anymore, and that's a great sign for them. Um, for their offense, I'm really curious to see how they work together, like you mentioned. Jonathan
Mhm.
Mingo has been doing separate work with Steve Smith Sr.
Mhm.
just to improve on his receiving game because there's a lot of differences. You could tell like he wasn't ready for like the difference between college games and pro games. I'm still a believer with him,
Mhm.
but for me, I drafted a rookie over him because I'm like, he's got to
Mhm.
go out and prove it. But the good news is he's not the number one option. That's Deontay Johnson, and they got
Mhm.
veteran options ahead of him. Um, and they got Xavier Legette. Legette will take some time. Jonathan Brooks is like he could be a top 15 back this year if he wasn't coming off of injury. I would have
Mhm.
been happy to pick him where he was at. Um, but like they got some guys now, and they invested heavily in the offensive line. That's a big difference. It sucks losing Brian Burns, 100%.
Yeah.
But I think there will be some more like continuity with this team, and Dave Canales has been very quarterback friendly with the last two quarterbacks he's worked with
Mhm.
Baker Mayfield, with Geno Smith. He'll find a way to make Bryce Young feel secure, so like Bryce Young can feel confident going out there and show him
Mhm.
what he did in Alabama. So I think they will be better. But your question's still about by how much?
Mhm.
Is it
Yeah.
going to take 3 more years, or do you just need 2 more years of retooling or something like that? That
Yeah.
stuff is going to matter. Yeah.
Yeah, especially like the fact that we've seen such quick, I guess, turnarounds for a couple teams lately. I mean, like you look at how the Bengals switched once Joe Burrow was there. The Texans last year, obviously, they were. It was pretty much like a two, like for the Texans, it feels like it was like a 1 year rebuild. For the Bengals, it was like a 2 year span. Even the Lions, it's like they were awful 1 year, and all of a sudden they had a really strong end of the season, and then last season they just absolutely balled out. So it felt like a year and a half rebuild for the Lions. And so I think a lot of
And it could be the Colts
teams,
this year. Like the
yeah,
Colts
it
are
could
well
be the
positioned
Colts
to do
this
that.
year. Where it's like a lot of teams have we've seen a lot of teams kind of do this quick mini rebuild to this relevancy, and so I think a lot of other teams around the league, maybe it's more so fans than teams, are expecting, uh, you know, quicker rebuilds, and having players develop more quickly. But obviously, we've seen on the other side of things where like teams just suck for so long, and it takes quite a while to get things sorted. And that might be the Panthers for the next like 5 years before they're good, still with Bryce Young, or maybe they move off if he is just that bad, But it'll be interesting to see kind of the patience people around the league have for the Panthers and their rebuild if it isn't as quick as these other teams have been.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very curious to see how well they do. Um, yeah, they're in a great division where they can easily finish like second or third because there's dysfunction among like every other team in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I'd probably still have them third or fourth under
Mm-hmm.
like Atlanta and Tampa Bay, but um, they could easily be better in a better spot than New Orleans if they play their cards right. So
Mm-hmm.
it looks like a Lions rebuild to me, in that it
Mm-hmm.
was going to be slower than the Bengals and the Texans, but
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like nonetheless they'll be good. Um, number one, I could have put the other team in the state as like a number one option, given that their only weakness was a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, this was a bigger storyline to me because this is a team that was first in the NFL with record coming off of the Super Bowl loss, and all of a sudden everything went wrong. I mean everything offensively
Mm-hmm.
went wrong. Big Dom ejected from the game. Like um, he's like the head of security for the Eagles. The Eagles love him, absolutely love him. He's kind of like the heart and soul of that team. Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, butting heads. To me, I want to figure out if the Eagles figured out their struggles because once again,
Mm-hmm.
they're off-season darlings. They always win in the off-season and in the draft. But until they figure out the fundamental problem, and maybe it was the coordinator changes, maybe it was the personnel differences. I don't think they figured it out yet. For me, by valuing Saquon and picking up Jalen Hurts, I am largely confident that they have because the amount of players they have in their starting lineup now that are dogs is insane. Even though they lost Travis Kelsey. I mean, sorry, the Jason. Jason. Sorry, Ron Kelsey. I think it's pronounced Kels now, by the way. Not sure. I think we might have been pronouncing it wrong this whole entire time. But to have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert already on the team, then to add Jahan Dodson, then a running back, like the best player on a team in your division in Saquon Barkley and the talent that Saquon Barkley is, there's no excuses now. I feel like you've had to figure out your struggles here, like with whatever went wrong with offense. And to keep in mind, now you have Kellen Moore, a guy that's very creative as a play caller, and you had a Vic Fangio. There's so many struggles on the defensive end last year. You went to 2 coordinator changes. You went to Matt Patricia of all people to try and figure out their defensive solutions, and guess how that turned out. I think Vic Fangio is a much better talent. He has so many weapons to work with. This might be the best defensive line he's worked with in his entire tenure, and he worked with the Niners when they went to the Super Bowl. So I want to see if the Eagles figured it out because if they do, they might have something to say about the San Francisco 49ers getting to the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. And I think another big question is just how well will their secondary play this year?
Absolutely.
Because I think that like
they just lost a guy to injury, right?
James Bradberry.
Yeah.
Granted, he's kind of felt like he's been on the downward trajectory for the past season and a half, maybe. And so, I mean, obviously, they addressed that during the offseason. They spent their first 2 picks drafting cornerbacks with Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Right now, at least on the ESPN depth chart, they're both listed as nickelbacks, with Slay as one on one side and then Kele Ringo on the other. I know fans weren't the biggest fan of Ringo last year, and so you're hoping for a nice second-year jump from Ringo. But then it's like, I mean, I guess you got Gardner Johnson back and the reblanket there, but it'll be interesting to see how this secondary kind of molds together because I feel like on that kind of back portion of the season slump that they had, the secondary was kind of like a big part of that. Sure, the offense stalled out a little bit more than you'd like to see, but when the team is this well built, you really can't afford to have your offense and defense struggle with the amount of talent you got here. So I think we're going to need to see a lot of step up from the secondary if the Eagles want to make another Super Bowl run.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Especially because you look at teams like the Chiefs, Bengals, Ravens. They all have weapons you need to have like continuity in the secondary now. Like Bengals are probably the scariest out of those 3 as far as their weapons, but like even the Texans, like how are you gonna guard Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell at the same time? If you don't even have like the coverage to like communicate on one guy, like that's gonna be very, very difficult. And there might not be a right answer to that because the Texans present a unique problem with that regard. But if your secondary was like 20% better than what it was last year, I don't think you lose the way you did, like to end off the season. So
yeah.
I think with the coordinator changes and the talent they added, I think it'd be enough. Knowing the talents that like Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown and that whole defensive line are, I think it'll be enough. They supported it enough. We have to see because if Sirianni proves that he's actually a cancer to what the Eagles are trying to do, that might offset any sort of improvements Roseman's trying to make. And now you're suddenly looking at like, oh, we need to get a coaching change. Maybe we have to get Bill Belichick to resolve all of this. So,
Yeah.
Okay, guys, that wraps it up for us. We're really excited to see the Ravens versus the Chiefs week 1. I know Lamar is downplaying it, but I think this will be a significant game for the Ravens from a morale standpoint. Even if they lose, is this a lost cause season for them? Because honestly, they were the most talented team in the AFC last year, and I think it's a proven game to get their confidence up, whether they can keep up with the Chiefs. With the Chiefs, I'm not too worried if they win or lose this game, but I just want to see a good game. And the
Hmm.
Eagles and the Packers, that should be a good game as well. Um,
Yeah.
I think I'll figure out the answer to my question in a couple days, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
We'll see.
We'll see how good all four teams do. Excited for this upcoming fantasy team. Hope my draft goes a lot better than this one does. Meaning
Hmm.
I get a stack lineup. Really happy about this. But Corstian, enjoy week one. And
Hmm.
football's back, baby.
Yeah, it's back. Woo woo.
Yeah, follow us on our Instagram page over here, mon.a.mission. We're gonna get very busy as this NFL season comes along, so you don't want to miss a single vid. Like nuggets and information that could help you out with like sleepers, teams on the rise, teams to pay attention to, teams to like be off on, teams that raise red flags, players that raise red flags. We got it for you on the
Hmm.
channel and Instagram. On YouTube, it's a on a mission. And with that, we'll see you guys next week to recap the first week of games.
Yep. Peace.
There we go. Nice,
That was
nice.
so
See you guys
slow.
later.
Yeah.